in the barren deserts of Al-Hazar Province, Iraq, October 12, 2003, an event transpired that would irrevocably reshape the landscape of conflict, shattering the facade of invincibility held by one of the world's most formidable military forces. Emerging from the arid sands like phantoms conjured from a long-forgotten tale, 3,000 men from various tribes united, brandishing nothing but makeshift weapons fashioned from scrap metal and old wood. The heavily armed soldiers stationed in fortified compounds, equipped with state-of-the-art technology and intelligence, were met with a wave of sheer dread, abandoning their positions, their arms, and their very grasp on reality. What these troops experienced was not mere chaos, it was something far more sinister. The birth of an insurgent strategy so cunning, so intricately woven into the fabric of local lore and collective memory, that even today, years later, the intelligence files detailing those operations remain classified, sealed away by governments wary of exposing the vulnerabilities they had desperately sought to conceal. The man who orchestrated this unprecedented uprising would become known to Western intelligence as the most formidable adversary in the Middle East, a figure so feared that even the most seasoned operatives avoided speaking his name in public. Yet his narrative is conspicuously absent from mainstream accounts, deliberately omitted by authorities who recognize that some insurgencies are too unsettling to confront head-on. Before we delve into the journey of Farid al-Jabari and the psychological warfare he unleashed upon foreign troops, if you're captivated by the hidden truths of contemporary military history that governments strive to suppress, subscribe to Shadows of Conflict right now, and don't forget to click that notification bell. Share in the comments where you're tuning in from. We cherish hearing about our community of history aficionados scattered across the globe. What you are about to uncover challenges everything you thought you knew about the Iraq War, and reveals why countless soldiers still grapple with the echoes of battles fought not just on the ground, but deep within their minds. The Al-Hazar province in 2003 was a vast expanse of dunes, stark cliffs, and relentless sun, a terrain seemingly sculpted by time to consume those who dared to tread upon it. Known locally as the Heart of the Sand, this unforgiving land stretched across the horizon like a desolate canvas, its 1.5 million inhabitants caught in a web of conflict that threatened to unravel their very existence. The searing air hung heavy with dust, carrying the acrid scent of burnt oil mingled with something more potent. The bitter stench of despair that had lingered since the first echoes of war, casting a pall over the people's daily lives. This was an environment where the sun blazed mercilessly, where shadows offered no refuge, and where the distinction between civilization and desolation blurred until it faded into nothingness. Into this realm of chaos and uncertainty was born Farid al-Jabari on June 22, 1975, the eldest son of a humble farmer. As dusk descended upon the Heart of the Sand, the relentless sun finally relinquished its grip, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. The air, once stifling and oppressive, now carried a whisper of coolness that hinted at the promise of night. Farid al-Jabari gathered his men around a flickering fire, the flames casting a dance of light upon their faces, illuminating their weariness and resolve. The flickering glow revealed the stark contrast of their weathered features against the backdrop of the vast desert, each man bearing the marks of a life lived under siege, both physically and mentally. "Tonight we speak of legends," Farid began, his voice low and steady, drawing the attention of his weary fighters. They leaned in closer, eyes glistening with curiosity and a hint of trepidation. For in their hearts, they too sought to become part of the tales that would echo through the ages, woven into the very fabric of their land. He recounted the story of Al-Mansur, the ancient warrior whose cunning had once turned the tide of battle against overwhelming odds. He was not a man of brute strength, Farid said, but a master of deception. He used the land to his advantage, just as we must do. The men nodded in agreement, their spirits buoyed by the promise of a strategy that aligned with their own understanding of the terrain. The heart of the sand was not merely a backdrop, but a living entity that they could manipulate to their favor. As he spoke, a sense of urgency began to permeate the air, and the men felt the weight of impending decisions. They had tasted victory once, but this time they would need more than valor. They would require unity, coordination, and perhaps even a touch of the supernatural that had long been interwoven in the stories told around fires. The elders had often whispered of the jinn, spirits of the desert that could either aid or hinder, depending on how one approached them. Farid's mind raced as he formulated a plan that included invoking the tales of old to galvanize not only his men, but the tribes who had remained hesitant. He envisioned a gathering, a great council under the stars where they could invoke the spirits, beseeching them for guidance and strength. With a flick of his hand, he urged his men to spread the word. Tomorrow we shall call for the tribes to unite. We will remind them that, together, we are not merely fighting against soldiers but against an idea that seeks to erase our very existence. As the fire crackled, a sudden rustle in the brush brought their attention to the shadows lurking at the edges of their camp. A lone figure emerged, cloaked in the dark fabric of the night. It was Bashir, a member of the local council known for his connection to the old ways. He approached with caution, his eyes glinting with the knowledge of secrets best left unsaid. "Farid al-Jabari," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have heard your call, but I come with a warning. The foreign soldiers are not simply men of steel. They are driven by fear, yes, but also by a desperation to maintain control. They will respond with ruthless tactics. Your plan must reflect the intricacies of their minds." Bashir's words hung in the air like a thundercloud, a stark reminder of the stakes involved. We cannot merely rely on old tales, we must adapt. Use the stories to inspire, but also to confuse, to sow doubt in their ranks. Farid considered this, the weight of leadership pressing down upon his shoulders. Then we shall act swiftly and with precision. If they wish to engage in a game of fear, let us show them that we are masters of the unknown. As the night deepened, the fire illuminated the faces of men who were not merely warriors but bearers of a legacy. They would become the authors of their own history, carving their names into the annals of time. With the counsel of Bashir and the spirits of the past guiding them, they prepared to turn the tides once more. The heart of the sand would soon witness a battle not only for survival but for identity, echoing the sentiments of a land that had cried out for justice for far too long. Farid stood at the edge of the dune, the wind whipping through his hair, carrying the heat of the day and the weight of the desolation around him. As darkness settled over the heart of the sand, the flickering flames from the campfires below cast long shadows that danced like specters of the past. Each flicker reminded him of the tales his grandmother had told him as a child. Stories of valor, of tribes rising as one, of the cunning of the desert fox. Tonight, those stories would be the lifeblood of his strategy. The air thickened with an unspoken tension as Farid called for silence. The murmurs of the men faded into the background, replaced by the soft rustle of the sand beneath their feet. "Brothers," he began, his voice steady and resolute, "tonight we are not just men of the desert. We are the echoes of our ancestors. We carry their strength within us, and together we will turn the tide of this war." The eyes of the fighters gleamed with a fire that mirrored the stars above. They were ready for the challenge ahead. Bashir stepped forward, his brow furrowed with concern. "Farid, we must tread carefully. The enemy is not merely a horde of soldiers. They are armed with technology and tactics that outmatch us in sheer power. We cannot rely solely on bravery." His words hung in the air, a stark reminder of their precarious situation. Farid nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in Bashir's caution. "I understand, my friend, but let us not forget that the heart of a warrior is not measured by the weapons he wields, but by the will to fight for what he believes in. We will use their strength against them." With newfound resolve, Farid began to outline his plan. "We will divide our men into smaller groups, each tasked with a specific objective. We will strike at night, using the darkness as our ally. We know these sands better than they ever could. We will lure them into our traps, create chaos with diversion and ambush. Each skirmish will be a battle of wits, not just brute force." As the night wore on, the men gathered closer, their faces illuminated by the glow of the fires. They shared their own fears and hopes, weaving a tapestry of brotherhood that bound them tighter than any military bond. Amidst the preparations, a young scout named Idris approached Farid, breathless and wide-eyed with urgency. "Farid," he exclaimed, "I have seen something strange on the horizon. A convoy of foreign soldiers. There are more than we imagined, and they are moving through the valley." The news sent a ripple of fear through the gathered tribe, but Farid's mind raced with possibilities. "Then we have no time to waste," Farid declared. "Let us use this to our advantage. We will lay our first trap, and we will show them the spirit of our land, fierce and unpredictable. Gather the men, we ride at dawn." As the last embers of the fires flickered and faded, Farid felt a surge of hope. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but he could sense the pulse of unity in the air, a collective heartbeat that echoed the resolve of their ancestors. In the depths of the heart of the sand, where despair had once held sway, a flicker of defiance ignited, a rebellion that would rewrite their fate. In the stark chill of the desert night, the tribesmen prepared themselves, not just for battle, but for a fight to reclaim their story, a fight to ensure that the tales of their bravery would not fade, but would instead resonate through the ages, echoing across the sands long after the last gun had fallen silent. As the first stars began to punctuate the indigo sky, casting a faint shimmer across the shifting sands, Farid's voice rose above the crackling fire. "We are not merely defending our homes, we are reclaiming our story. Each of you has a place in this tale, and together we shall forge a new chapter." The fighters, weary yet resolute, leaned closer, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. The air was thick with the scent of roasting meat and the tang of sweat and determination. Farid's heart swelled as he watched the flicker of hope ignite in their eyes, forging the bonds of camaraderie that would be essential in the days to come. Idris, still catching his breath from the long ride back, stepped forward, his chest heaving. The enemy is closer than we thought. They march with heavy feet and a thirst for blood, but they are not invincible. His voice quivered with the weight of urgency. We have to act before they reach the oasis. We can't allow them to seize our lifeblood. Bashir, leaning on his staff, nodded gravely. Idris speaks true. They will use the water as a weapon against us. We must lay our traps not just for their men, but for their beasts of burden as well. If we can separate them from their supplies, we can turn the tide of battle in our favor. Farid considered their words, his mind racing through the possibilities. Then we shall strike at dusk when their vision is clouded by the fading light. We will create illusions in the sands, making them believe they are surrounded by phantoms of our ancestors. It will confuse them, give us time to strike. The group nodded, the firelight reflecting determination in their eyes. They began to whisper amongst themselves, strategizing and pooling ideas. Young men and women who had once been mere farmers and merchants began to envision themselves as warriors, defenders of their way of life. As the night deepened, Farid felt a stirring in his soul. It wasn't just the promise of battle that fueled him. It was the spirits of his forefathers, whispering through the wind, urging him to remember their struggles and victories. He glanced at Bashir, who seemed lost in thought. "What do you see, old friend?" Farid asked. Bashir's eyes were distant, as if gazing into the past. "I see the spirits of our people, Farid. They stand with us, but they expect more than just our bravery. They demand our cunning and our unity. Alone, we are but grains of sand. Together, we are a storm." "Let us conjure that storm," Farid breathed, feeling the weight of responsibility settle upon his shoulders. "Tomorrow we fight not just for ourselves, but for every soul who has walked these sands before us." As the embers of the fire glowed brighter, illuminating the fierce determination etched on each face, Farid knew that dawn would bring not only the sun, but also a reckoning. It would be a day of trials, a day where legends would be born from valor, and the heart of the sand would echo the triumph of those who dared to stand united. With the plan laid and hearts steeled, the fighters settled into their makeshift beds, their whispers a soft lullaby against the vast desert night. Farid lay awake, the weight of the stars heavy on his chest. As he drifted into a restless sleep, he could feel the pulse of the earth beneath him, a reminder that the sands were alive, holding the stories of those who had come before, and soon they would hold the story of the united tribes as well. As the night deepened, the stars above flickered like scattered diamonds across a black velvet sky, a stark contrast to the flickering flames of the campfires below. Farid stood at the edge of their makeshift encampment, his silhouette outlined against the warm glow, the weight of his ancestors' spirits heavy upon his shoulders. The air was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension that crackled like the spark of a flint igniting dry brush. "Tonight," he murmured, more to himself than to the gathered warriors, "we honor those who have come before us. Their strength courses through our veins, and with it we shall reclaim our future." As he spoke, the faces of the tribesmen, illuminated by the firelight, reflected a mix of determination and trepidation. Bashir, leaning against a weathered tent post, nodded solemnly. "We must be the shadows that dance in the light of our enemies. Let them underestimate us, for it is in their arrogance that we shall find our advantage." His voice, though calm, carried the weight of countless battles fought and lost. It was a reminder that wisdom could often lead to survival. Idris returned to the circle, his youthful energy contrasting sharply with the grim resolve surrounding him. "The enemy approaches with a larger force than we anticipated," he said, his breath quickening. "But they are not prepared for the tricks we have up our sleeves. The sand itself is our ally. Let's use it." Inspired by the urgency in Idris's voice, Farid gestured for silence. "Let us not only trap them but also confuse them," he said, his mind racing with ideas. "We will scatter the bones of our past across the sands, their stories weaving a tapestry of deception. We shall create mirages, illusions of our strength when, in truth, we are but a handful, striking from the shadows." Plans began to take shape, and the tribesmen broke off into groups, each assigned a crucial task in the elaborate scheme. The wise elder Bashir organized the creation of false camps, fires flickering in the distance to suggest a greater force than what lay hidden in the dunes. The sound of clattering pots and laughter filled the night air, a deliberate charade meant to lure the enemy into a false sense of security. Meanwhile, Idris and a few daring scouts ventured further into the desert, their footsteps silent against the soft sand. They carried with them an assortment of flares and smoke bombs, artifacts of ingenuity forged from the very earth they called home. Their mission was clear: to create chaos, to sow confusion as the enemy approached, and to guide their warriors when the time was right. As the hours slipped by, camaraderie grew among the tribesmen, laughter mingling with stories of old. They recounted the feats of legendary ancestors who had once danced with the winds of the desert, their spirits igniting the hearts of those who would stand against tyranny. In those moments, the looming threat faded, replaced by a fierce sense of unity, a bond forged in the fires of collective hope. But as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, a chilling gust of wind swept through the camp. An eerie silence fell, and the warriors instinctively turned towards the east, where the enemy would soon emerge. Every face was set in resolve, hearts racing as they grasped their weapons tighter. "Remember, brothers and sisters," Farid called out, his voice rising above the stillness. "This is our land. We are not merely fighting against the enemy. We are fighting for our stories, our future, and our very existence. Stand strong, for the dawn may bring battle, but it will also bring the chance to write our own legends." With that, the tribesmen steeled themselves, the fire within them igniting anew. The moment of confrontation drew near, and as the sun broke over the dunes, they would rise to meet it, not just as warriors, but as the bearers of their legacy, ready to etch their names into history. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a pale golden hue across the endless dunes, a chill breeze carried with it the whispering voices of the ancestors. Farid stood at the forefront of the encampment, his silhouette etched against the glowing sky. He could feel the weight of his tribe's hopes resting on his shoulders, a palpable pressure that ignited the fire in his heart. "Brothers," he called, his voice resonating through the crisp air. The tribesmen, their faces painted with determination, turned their eyes toward him. "Today, we do not just fight for water, we fight for our identity. Each grain of sand beneath our feet tells a story waiting to be reclaimed." Idris, youthful exuberance always bubbling beneath the surface, stepped forward, his pulse quickening with excitement and anxiety. "Farid, the enemy approaches. I heard their horses last night, their laughter echoing through the stillness. They are not to be underestimated. We must act swiftly." Bashir nodded, his expression calm yet fierce. "True, the enemy is bold, but they do not know this land as we do. We shall be like shadows, slipping through the very folds of the earth. But we must be clever. The illusions we create must not only confuse but also inspire fear. It is the unexpected that will turn the tide." With the elders' words echoing in their minds, the tribesmen set to work. They moved like whispers through the sand, gathering materials to craft their illusions. Worn-out clothing, discarded blankets, and remnants of old banners. They fashioned them into phantom warriors, each figure positioned strategically throughout the dunes, casting a haunting semblance of their strength. As the sun began to ascend, bathing the landscape in blinding light, a sudden hush fell over the camp. The warriors paused, looking out toward the distant ridge. The enemy forces were visible now, a dark mass of riders and camels surging across the horizon. Their armor glinted maliciously in the sunlight, a stark contrast to the soft hues of the desert. "Hold your positions," Farid instructed, his voice steady despite the rising tension in the air. "Let them come closer. Let them believe they can claim victory so easily." Idris clenched his fists, his youthful bravado tinged with trepidation. What if they see through our ruse? What if they charge before we are ready? Bashir placed a reassuring hand on Idris's shoulder. "Fear can be a powerful tool, young one. Trust in our unity. Trust in our craftiness. It is not the size of the enemy that matters, but the spirit with which we confront them." As the enemy drew nearer, the tribesmen stood resolute, hearts synchronized in a rhythm of defiance and hope. They could feel the pulse of the desert beneath them, a heartbeat echoing the stories of their ancestors. Stories of warriors who had fought and died for the land, for family, for the very essence of what it meant to belong. Suddenly, a distant cry rang out from the enemy camp, a sound that sent a shiver through the ranks of the tribesmen. It was the war cry of the approaching enemy, a cacophony of bravado that sought to drown out their spirits. But Farid merely smiled, for he knew that their own cry would soon rise, a battle hymn born from centuries of struggle and resilience. "Now," he commanded, raising his arm high, "let us reclaim our narrative. We are not just defenders. We are the authors of our fate." With that, the tribesmen raised their voices in a vibrant chant that echoed across the dunes, a powerful invocation of their shared history. The very sands seemed to vibrate with their energy, and in that moment, unity transformed into an unbreakable shield. As the first enemy riders broke through the crest of the ridge, their eyes widening in disbelief, the tribesmen were ready. With a final glance at his brothers, Farid took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history surge through him. Today, they would write a new chapter, one that would be told for generations to come. A chapter where the heart of the sand would beat in time with their indomitable spirit. The first light of dawn spilled across the horizon, casting a soft glow over the shifting sands and illuminating the resolute faces of the tribe's warriors. Farid, standing tallest among them, felt the cool breeze brush against his skin, whispering promises of strength and unity. He knew this was not merely a battle for survival. It was a fight to honor those who had walked before them, to etch their legacy into the annals of time. "Warriors," he called out, his voice steady yet commanding. Today, we do not fight just for ourselves. We fight for the spirits who guide us, for the dreams that have been woven into the fabric of our history. Let us show our enemies that the heart of our tribe cannot be extinguished. A murmur of agreement swept through the group, their spirits ignited by the fire of determination that crackled in the air. Bashir, leaning on his staff, nodded approvingly. Remember, it is not the number of men that wins wars, but the strength of the mind and the courage of the heart. Let us outsmart them, maneuver like shadows upon the dunes. Idris, though still trembling with nerves, felt a surge of resolve at the elder's words. "We will craft illusions," he declared, his voice rising above the others. "We will make them believe they face an army when they confront only us." He was met with a chorus of cheers, the adrenaline of impending battle coursing through their veins. As the sun began to rise higher, the tribes scattered to prepare their deceptive tactics. They worked in harmony, weaving together the fibrous strands of desert grass and scavenged materials into effigies that would stand tall against the morning light. Each warrior was a craftsman, pouring their spirit into the phantoms they created, some painted with ochre and charcoal to mimic the hues of their own skin, others draped in cloaks that flapped like wings in the wind. Farid moved among them, offering words of encouragement, ensuring every warrior felt the weight of their purpose. He paused by Idris, who was struggling to steady a particularly large effigy. "You do not have to bear this burden alone, young one," he said gently, placing a hand on Idris's shoulder. "Lean on your brothers and sisters. Together, we are stronger." With a nod, Idris summoned his fellow warriors, and soon they were lifting the effigy as one, laughter breaking through the tension. It was a moment of unity, a reminder that the collective strength of their tribe was what would define them. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed across the dunes. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet, and the laughter ceased, replaced by a heavy silence. Farid's heart raced. The enemy was closer than they had anticipated. "To your positions," he commanded, and the tribe fell into a practiced rhythm, each warrior taking their place behind the carefully crafted illusions. As the enemy emerged from the haze of the desert, a dark wave of figures rising against the sun, Farid's breath caught in his throat. There were far more than he had counted, each silhouette brimming with the promise of violence and the intent to conquer. But just as doubt began to creep into his mind, he caught a glimpse of Bashir's calm visage. The elder was already calculating, eyes sharp and focused. "Remember the plan," he murmured, "and trust in one another." With a deep breath, Farid steadied his resolve. "Let us show them the strength of our spirit. They may have numbers, but we have heart. For every step they take, we will meet them with the fire of our ancestors." The tribe tightened their grips around their weapons, standing tall and proud behind the veil of illusions. As the enemy advanced, their numbers casting long shadows across the sand, Farid exchanged a resolute glance with Idris, the young warrior now alight with a fiery determination. Together, they would face whatever came next, united as a tribe, bound by history and ready to reclaim their narrative. As the first clash of swords rang out, the desert came alive with the roar of battle, and the tribe surged forward, emboldened by the spirits of those who had fought before them, ready to carve their legacy into the annals of time. The sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows across the desert floor. The air was thick with tension, a palpable energy that coursed through the veins of every tribesman gathered on the ridge. Farid, standing at the forefront, felt the weight of his ancestors pressing upon his shoulders. He surveyed his warriors, their faces resolute yet tinged with a hint of fear. It was time to convert that fear into strength. "Look beyond the horizon," Farid called out, his voice echoing like a thunderclap through the stillness. "What do you see?" "The banners of our enemies," shouted Idris, his youthful voice filled with a fervor that ignited the hearts of the collective. "They come to steal our land, our stories, our very souls." "Then let them come," Farid replied, raising his spear toward the sky. "Let them come and witness the fire within us. Let them see that we are not merely shadows in the sand, but a storm that will rise to meet them." With that, the tribesmen erupted in a fervent chant, their voices intertwining like a tapestry of defiance. Bashir, observing the scene, nodded in approval. He had seen many battles, but the spirit of this tribe, fueled by their shared heritage, was unlike any he had known. "Remember, strength lies not only in numbers, but in the heart of each warrior," he reminded them, his wisdom cutting through the fervor like a knife. As the enemy drew closer, the tribesmen prepared their defensive illusions with renewed vigor. They placed their crafted phantoms strategically atop the dunes, some resembling fearsome beasts, others shaped into the likeness of legendary warriors from their past. Each phantom served not only as a distraction, but as a reminder of the triumphs and trials that had shaped their identity. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed across the sands. The enemy, emboldened by their numerical advantage, began to charge forward, their war cries slicing through the air like arrows. But the tribesmen stood firm, a wall of determination and unity. Idris, feeling the weight of the moment, turned to Farid. "What if our illusions fail? What if they see through our ruse?" Farid placed a reassuring hand on the young warrior's shoulder. "Then we fight as one. We fight not just for today, but for the memory of those who have fought before us, and for those who will come after. We are the guardians of our legacy." As the enemy neared, a sudden gust of wind swept across the dunes, stirring the sands into a frenzy. It felt like the desert itself was echoing their battle cry, invigorating the spirits of the tribesmen. In that moment, Farid raised his spear high once more, signaling the time for action. "To the phantoms, brothers. We will confuse them, divide them, and when they falter we will strike." With a united roar, the tribesmen surged forward, moving as one with the precision of a single entity. The phantoms danced in the wind, casting eerie shadows upon the advancing enemy. Confusion rippled through the ranks of the foes as they hesitated, uncertainty creeping into their hearts. But the battle was far from over. As the tribesmen engaged, they quickly realized that the enemy was not only numerous, but also skilled in combat. Idris found himself face to face with an enemy warrior, a hulking figure adorned with the trophies of past victories. With a racing heart, he remembered Farid's words, the essence of their fight. Drawing on every ounce of training and spirit within him, Idris lunged forward, determined to prove that the fire of his tribe would not be extinguished. And so, as the sun dipped lower, casting the landscape in hues of crimson and gold, the battle raged on. A testament to courage, heritage, and the indomitable spirit of a tribe united against the tide of oppression. The clash of steel echoed across the dunes, as the sun ascended higher, casting long shadows of warriors and enemies alike. Farid, his stature commanding and unwavering, rallied his warriors with a fierce battle cry, each word igniting the fire within them. Remember our ancestors. Fight not just for survival, but for the legacy that courses through our veins. As the enemy surged forward, their ranks appeared like a dark wave against the golden sands, yet the tribe held steady, their hearts synchronized like the beating of a single drum. Bashir stood back, his eyes scanning the battlefield, seeking signs of despair among his people. Instead, he saw Idris, now emboldened, parrying blows with a newfound agility. The young warrior had discovered strength in vulnerability, and it radiated from him like the first light of dawn. Just behind him, a sense of urgency brewed as Farid noticed a gap forming in their defenses. The enemy, emboldened by their numbers, pushed forward with relentless ferocity. "We must strengthen our lines," he bellowed, but in that moment a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. What if the illusions faltered? What if they could not hold back the tide? In that instant of uncertainty, Bashir stepped forward, his voice calm yet commanding. "A warrior's spirit cannot be broken by mere numbers, Farid. Trust in our unity. Trust in our illusions." He gestured to the shifting sands around them, where their clever traps lay hidden, waiting to ensnare the unwary. With a quick nod, Farid directed his warriors to move with precision, reinforcing the front lines while Idris, now more confident, found himself facing a towering enemy warrior, clad in heavy armor that gleamed menacingly in the sun. The giant swung a sword that could fell a tree, but Idris, channeling the strength of his tribe, ducked low and rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly strike. As the battle raged on, the tribe's illusions began to take effect. The enemy faltered, stumbling into pits disguised as solid ground, and some were ensnared by cleverly hidden ropes that tripped them into the sands. Laughter erupted from the tribe, not from mockery, but from the sheer thrill of their cunning. Their unity was a force to be reckoned with, a living, breathing entity that thrived on the power of the collective. Yet, in the chaos, Idris spotted a glimmer of silver that pierced the dust, a banner held high by the enemy commander, who rallied his troops with fervor. Realizing that the heart of their enemy lay within that banner, he felt a surge of determination welling up within him. He turned to his fellow warriors. "If we can take that banner, we can turn the tide." Inspired by Idris's resolve, a few of the younger warriors joined him, and together they weaved through the battle, ducking and dodging, hearts pounding with the thrill of purpose. Farid, sensing their intention, shouted encouragement, "Go! Show them the strength of our spirit." As they approached the enemy's lines, Idris could feel the weight of the moment. With each step he recalled the faces of his family, the stories of ancestors, and the camaraderie shared among his tribe. With a fierce battle cry he lunged forward, aiming for the banner, while chaos swirled around him. The world narrowed down to that singular goal, where courage, heritage, and unity collided in a dance of destiny. And in that moment, beneath the rising sun, the fate of the tribe hung in the balance, not just dependent on strength of arms, but on the unbreakable bond they shared, a bond that could shatter the chains of fear and forge a path to victory. As Idris surged forward, the wind whipped around him, a fierce companion urging him on. The rhythmic thuds of his heart pounded in his ears, a drumbeat of exhilaration and fear intertwined. Each stride brought him closer to the enemy's banner, an emblem of their defiance now within reach. He could see the colors fluttering defiantly, mocking the very essence of his tribe's struggle. Behind him, a handful of younger warriors, each fueled by the same fire ignited in their hearts, followed closely, their voices raised in a battle cry that echoed against the arid expanse of the desert. For our ancestors, for our land. They shouted, their resolve solidifying like rock beneath the weight of their collective hopes. The enemy, momentarily distracted by the phantoms dancing in the distance, failed to notice the determined advance of the tribe's boldest youth. As they approached the enemy formation, Bashir, standing atop a rocky outcrop, observed the unfolding scene with a keen eye. His seasoned instincts whispered warnings, yet he felt a flicker of hope. The chaos wrought by the illusions had indeed sown seeds of doubt among the ranks of their foes, but the battle was far from won. He raised his voice, his words carrying a weight only experience could provide. Hold the line. Keep your hearts fierce. Remember, the strength of our ancestors flows through your veins. Idris reached the perimeter of the enemy's camp, the air thick with the smell of sweat and iron. He spotted the banner held aloft by a looming figure, a brutish warrior clad in dark leather armor, whose presence alone seemed to cast a shadow over their spirits. The warrior's eyes locked onto Idris, a challenge sparking in their depths. There was no turning back now. The moment of truth had arrived. With a swift nod, Idris signaled to his comrades. They charged as one, a wave of fervor crashing against the enemy's defenses. The brutish warrior met Idris head-on, raising his weapon, a massive axe glinting menacingly in the harsh sun. But Idris, drawing from the depth of his training and the teachings of Farid, sidestepped at the last moment, his body moving with a fluidity that belied his youth. He struck, aiming for the warrior's exposed flank, fueled by the memories of the stories told around the fire. Tales of bravery and sacrifice. The clash echoed through the battlefield, a sound that reverberated not just in the air, but within the hearts of the tribe. Bashir watched, knowing this was a pivotal moment. If Idris succeeded, not only would they gain the banner, but they would also awaken the embers of courage in every warrior present. As he scanned the battlefield, he recognized the shift. The enemy's confidence wavered, uncertainty creeping into their ranks. Just then, a piercing scream shattered the air, drawing Bashir's attention. He turned to see one of the younger warriors, a boy named Malik, being grappled by two enemy soldiers. Without hesitation, Bashir leaped from his vantage point, instinctively rushing to his aid. His seasoned skill turned the tide of the skirmish, his blade a blur as he engaged the assailants, fearlessly defending the next generation. With Bashir's intervention, Idris felt a surge of hope. He pressed on, shoving aside his doubts. The banner was within reach. As he lunged forward, the brutish warrior swung his axe in a desperate arc, but Idris ducked low, narrowly avoiding the deadly blade. With a final burst of energy, he grasped the banner's pole and yanked it free from its holder. Victory surged through him as he held the banner aloft, its colors dancing in the wind, a symbol of unity and defiance. The tribe roared, their voices intertwining into a single chorus of triumph, echoing across the desert as the enemy faltered, realizing that they faced not merely warriors on the battlefield, but a united spirit emboldened by their heritage. As the battle raged on, the tide was turning. Farid, seeing Idris hoist the banner, felt a swell of pride. He knew that this moment would be etched into their history, a testament to the endurance of their spirit, a beacon of hope that would guide them through this fierce storm. The desert, once a desolate expanse, was now alive with the sounds of their fight, a symphony of courage woven through the fabric of time. As the dust from the fierce skirmish settled, the sun began its descent, casting a molten glow across the battlefield. The cries of the wounded echoed faintly, but amidst this, a newfound fervor coursed through the ranks of Farid's warriors. They gathered around Idris, the banner held high as a symbol of their unity and triumph. Farid, his heart swelling with pride, stepped forward to address his tribe. "Brothers and sisters," he bellowed, his voice ringing across the dunes, "today we have proven that our spirit cannot be extinguished. Each of you fought not just for your lives, but for our future, our children, and the legacy of our ancestors. Let us honor those who fought bravely beside us, for their courage has paved the way for our victory." As he spoke, Malik, still recovering from his near defeat, approached Bashir. "How did you know to save me?" he asked, his voice trembling with gratitude. Bashir, ever wise and steady, replied, "It is not just skill that defines a warrior, Malik, but the bonds we forge in battle. You are part of this tribe, and together we thrive or fall." Meanwhile, Idris, feeling the weight of the banner now resting on his shoulder, looked around at his fellow warriors, their faces illuminated by the fading sunlight. He could see the determination in their eyes, a reflection of his own resolve. "We cannot rest yet," he said, his voice steady and filled with newfound authority. "The enemy will not simply retreat, we must prepare for what comes next." As if on cue, a rumble echoed from the horizon, the dust rising in a cloud that hinted at the enemy's regrouping forces. Farid turned to his tribe, his eyes fierce. "Gather your weapons. The fight for our land is far from over. We will not allow them to claim what is ours." With a renewed sense of purpose, the tribe rallied together, their spirits ignited by Idris's victory and Farid's rallying call. They formed a defensive line, their backs to the setting sun, ready to face the encroaching shadow of their adversaries. Bashir, keenly aware of the tactics required for the ensuing confrontation, spoke urgently to Idris. "You have already proven your courage. Now, lead the charge from the front. Use that banner as a rallying point, but remember, it is not just a symbol, it is a beacon for all of us." Idris nodded, the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders like a mantle. As night approached, the stars began to twinkle overhead, a reminder of the tribe's ancestors watching over them. The air was thick with anticipation as the enemies surged forward, their battle cries piercing the stillness of the desert night. With a piercing shout, Idris raised the banner high once more, its fabric billowing like a phoenix taking flight. "For our tribe, for our honor," he roared, charging forward into the fray, his comrades following in a wave of fervor. The battle would not be easy, but in that moment the spirit of resilience thrummed through the very sands beneath their feet, binding them together in an unbreakable bond forged in fire and blood. As the clash of steel rang out, and the night became a tapestry of struggle and defiance, Farid, Bashir, Idris, and the rest of the tribe knew that their fight was about more than survival. It was about preserving their very essence against the tide of darkness that sought to engulf them. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the battlefield, Idris gathered the warriors around him. The air was heavy with the scent of sweat and dust, but the palpable energy of their recent triumph still lingered. With the enemy's banner now a trophy in their possession, the tribe felt emboldened. Yet they knew the fight was far from over. "Tonight we feast," Idris declared, his voice ringing out with a fervor that ignited the hearts of those gathered. "Let our laughter fill the night as we honor our fallen and celebrate our unity. But let us not forget the shadows that creep upon us. The enemy will not rest, and neither can we." Bashir stepped forward, his weathered face illuminated by the fading light. He placed a hand on Idris's shoulder, a gesture of both pride and responsibility. "Your spirit shines bright, young warrior. But as we feast, we must also fortify our defenses. Let us draw plans beneath the stars, for they are our guides in the darkness." As night fell, the tribe gathered around roaring fires, the flames crackling like the tension that still hung in the air. Tales of heroism were shared, each story a thread in the vibrant tapestry of their heritage. Farid, with his commanding presence, recounted the legends of their ancestors, intertwining the past with the present, reminding everyone of the strength that flowed through their veins. Yet amid the revelry, Idris couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. He glanced towards the distant mountains, their silhouettes ominous against the twilight sky. It was there, he knew, that the enemy would regroup and strategize their revenge. Determined to act, he summoned Malik, who had been eagerly absorbing the wisdom of Bashir and the stories of Farid. "Tonight we shall prepare for the dawn," Idris said, his tone shifting from celebratory to serious. "I need you to gather a small group of our fastest riders. We must send scouts to watch for any signs of the enemy's movement." Malik's eyes sparkled with newfound purpose, and he nodded vigorously. "I won't let you down, Idris." He dashed off into the night, eager to prove his worth and honor the trust placed in him. As the firelight danced, Idris felt a swell of pride and hope. Here, in this moment, he saw not just warriors but a family forged in adversity, united by a common purpose. The laughter of children echoed in the background, a reminder of all they were fighting for. But as the stars twinkled above, the tranquility was abruptly shattered. A piercing scream sliced through the night, followed by the frantic gallop of hooves. The scouts had returned, faces pale, eyes wide with alarm. "The enemy comes!" one shouted, breathless with urgency. "They ride hard and fast, seeking vengeance for their fallen." In an instant, the mood shifted from joy to urgency, and Idris felt the weight of leadership pressing upon him anew. "Warriors, to your feet," he called, his voice steady despite the rising tide of panic. "We stand together. This is our land, our legacy, and we will not let it fall." With Bashir by his side, Idris quickly organized the tribe, positioning the archers on the ridges and rallying the infantry at the forefront. The sounds of clashing steel and the rallying cries of warriors filled the air, creating a symphony of defiance against the encroaching darkness. As the first enemy troops breached the horizon, Idris and his tribe stood resolute, ready to defend their heritage with the ferocity of those who know that everything they love hangs in the balance. In that moment, united and fierce, they prepared to carve their names into the annals of history. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, the air grew thick with anticipation. The tribe gathered in the central circle, a sacred space marked by the ancient stones that had witnessed countless battles. Idris stood at the forefront, the fabric of the banner fluttering defiantly beside him. His heart raced, not just from the adrenaline of battle, but from the weight of the responsibility he had taken on. Tonight, we stand not just as warriors, but as one family, Idris proclaimed, his voice steady and clear. Each of you carries within you the spirit of our ancestors, and with that spirit we will forge our destiny. A cheer rose from the assembled warriors, echoing against the sandstone cliffs that surrounded them. Farid stepped forward, his presence commanding, as he placed a hand on Idris's shoulder. It is not just the strength of our arms that will ensure victory, but the strength of our hearts, he added, his eyes scanning the faces of his people. We fight for the lands that cradle our memories and for the future of our children. As the night deepened, Malik found himself restless, pacing near the fire that flickered like the spirit of their tribe. He had listened intently to the words of his elders, but an inner fire burned brightly within him. He longed to prove himself, to show that he was more than just the youngest of the fighters. With a determined glint in his eyes, he approached Bashir, who sat quietly, observing the preparations. "Bashir, I want to join the scouts. I can help gather information about the enemy's movements," Malik urged, his voice earnest. The elder warrior looked up, considering the youth's proposal. "Bravery is a noble trait, young one, but wisdom must accompany it. What do you think you will find out there?" "I'll find their weaknesses, their numbers. I'm quick and can move silently. I want to protect our home, and I believe I can make a difference," Malik replied, a touch of desperation coloring his tone. Bashir nodded slowly, sensing the resolve within the boy. "Very well. But heed my words. Knowledge is a double-edged sword. You must return with your findings, and you must exercise caution. Do not act recklessly." As Malik set off into the starlit desert, the sounds of the tribe faded behind him, replaced by the whispers of the night wind. He moved swiftly, his heart pounding with both fear and excitement. The vast expanse stretched before him, and he felt the weight of his ancestors guiding his steps. Meanwhile, back at the camp, the warriors began preparing their defenses. Idris and Farid strategized over the layout of the encampment, positioning archers on the high ground and creating barriers to channel the enemy's advance. They knew that the approaching forces would be more formidable this time, emboldened by their previous encounters. As hours passed, the air thickened with tension. Just as the tribe began to settle into their roles, a sudden shout broke through the stillness. "Look to the horizon," a watchman cried, pointing toward the flickering lights of torches in the distance. The tribe sprang into action, rallying at Idris's call. "Prepare yourselves. This is not just a battle. It is a testament to who we are. For our ancestors, for our children, we will fight." And as the sound of the enemy drums echoed in the night, the ground beneath them trembled, not only with the thundering approach of the enemy, but also with the fervent heartbeat of their united front. They were warriors, ready to defend their legacy, their pride ignited like the flames of the fire that crackled behind them. The time for battle was drawing near, and with it, the hope that their courage would carve a path to victory. As the sun sank low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert sands, Idris stood at the edge of the camp, his silhouette outlined by the dying light. The air was thick with anticipation. The celebratory drums had been silenced, replaced by a somber stillness as warriors prepared for what was to come. He could feel the hearts of his people, steady yet quickening, echoing the rhythm of the impending conflict. "Gather round," Bashir's voice rang out, firm yet calming, as he motioned for the warriors to form a circle around the central fire. The flames flickered to life, illuminating the faces of those who would stand shoulder to shoulder in defense of their home. Idris stepped forward, his heart pounding in tandem with the crackling fire. "Tonight we remember those who fought and fell," he began, his voice steady despite the weight resting on his shoulders. "We honor their sacrifice by ensuring that their legacy lives on through our courage." He glanced at Farid, who stood with arms crossed, a knowing nod of approval passing between them. Farid stepped forward, raising a wooden staff adorned with feathers and beads, symbols of their ancestors. "Listen well, my brothers and sisters," Farid intoned, his voice deep and resonant, weaving tales of valor and sacrifice. "In the darkest of nights, it is the light of our ancestors that guides us. They fought bravely against the tides of despair, and it is their strength that flows through our veins. We shall not falter." As the fire crackled and the flames danced, Malik, standing at the periphery of the circle, felt the weight of the moment. He had observed the older warriors, their expressions a mixture of resolve and fear. The stories of heroism filled him with a burning desire to contribute, to prove his mettle. He took a deep breath, summoning the courage that had eluded him moments earlier. "I want to scout the perimeter," he called out, his voice breaking slightly but filled with conviction. "If I can gather information about our enemy's movements, I can help us prepare." Idris turned to Malik, pride swelling within him. "Your eagerness is commendable, young one," he replied, his tone encouraging. "But scouting is not without its dangers. You must be cautious. If you choose this path, you do so with the weight of your tribe upon your shoulders." Malik nodded, determination etched on his youthful face. "I understand, Idris. I will not let you down." As the plan took shape, the warriors began to arm themselves, the sound of metal clinking against leather filling the air. Idris felt a surge of energy coursing through him, igniting the spirits of the tribe. They were not just fighting for survival. They were defending their way of life, their home, and each other. Suddenly, the night was pierced by the distant sound of war drums, a steady rhythm that resonated with the heartbeats of the tribe. The scouts had confirmed the enemy was drawing near, their intent clear. Idris raised his hand, silencing the murmurs that began to swell among the warriors. "Tonight, we stand not just as individuals, but as a unified force," he declared, his voice rising above the drums. "Each of us carries the spirit of our ancestors. We are the guardians of this land, and together we shall face whatever comes. Let them come." The fire blazed higher as the warriors raised their weapons in a fierce salute to their leader, their voices rising in a chorus of defiance. But as the last echoes of their battle cry faded into the night, the ground beneath them trembled slightly, a reminder of the storm that approached. With the scent of impending conflict hanging heavy in the air, Idris took one last look at his tribe, seeing in their faces both fear and fierce resolve. Tomorrow would bring challenges they could not yet foresee, but tonight they were together, bound by their shared purpose and the legacies they fought to protect. As the drums continued their relentless beat, the first stars appeared in the indigo sky, twinkling like the spirits of ancestors watching over them, ready to lend their strength in the battles to come. As the last rays of sunlight slipped below the horizon, the desert began to cool, but the tension among the tribe only intensified. Malik moved quietly through the sand, each step measured as he navigated the treacherous terrain, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. The flickering lights of the enemy's torches danced like fireflies in the distance, a stark reminder of the looming confrontation ahead. While Malik scoured the shadowy dunes, Idris stood tall at the center of the sacred circle, his powerful voice cutting through the murmurs of anticipation. Tonight we fight not just for our lives, but for the very essence of who we are. His words were met with a chorus of affirmations, the warriors echoing their leader's resolve. Each gaze reflected a commitment to their shared destiny, a legacy that transcended individual ambitions. Farid, watching from the periphery, felt the weight of history pressing upon him. He turned to Bashir, who was meticulously sharpening his blade, the quiet, rasping sound a steady reminder of the imminent struggle. "Do you think Malik is ready for this?" he asked, a hint of concern in his voice. Bashir paused, his weathered hands resting on the hilt of his sword. "He possesses a fire that can be both a blessing and a curse. His eagerness could lead to valor, but it might also blind him to the dangers that lurk in the dark." As he spoke, the distant sound of drums began to echo across the sands, a rhythmic pulse that sent shivers through the tribe. Meanwhile, Malik crested a small dune and hunkered down behind a rocky outcrop, the enemy camp sprawling out before him. He could see their numbers, too many to count, huddled around flickering fires, their voices a low murmur, punctuated by occasional laughter. He strained to catch snippets of conversation, hoping to uncover their plans. As he listened, an unsettling thought crept into his mind. What if he was not just a scout, but a pawn in a greater game? Suddenly, a sharp cry broke through the night, pulling his focus back to the battlefield. A small group of enemy riders had broken away from the camp, galloping toward his position. Panic surged within him, and he pressed himself against the cold stone, heart racing. The riders seemed to move with purpose, their eyes scanning the landscape, each heartbeat amplifying the urgency of his next move. Back at the tribe's encampment, the warriors prepared their weapons, the clinking of metal and the rustling of leather armor creating a symphony of readiness. Idris paced before them, reminding each fighter of their individual strengths. "Remember, we are the guardians of our history. We stand against this tide, not as mere fighters, but as the embodiment of our ancestors' dreams." As the first riders approached Malik's position, he felt a surge of adrenaline. He knew he had to make a choice: to retreat and warn the tribe of the enemy's advanced scouts, or to take a risk and gather crucial intelligence. The weight of his decision pressed heavily on him, but as he observed the riders drawing closer, their shadows growing larger, he made up his mind. With a burst of courage, Malik slipped away from his hiding spot and sprinted across the sandy expanse, darting between the shadows cast by the torches. He needed to return with information that could tip the scales, but he was acutely aware that the stakes had never been higher. As he pushed through the darkness, his thoughts turned to his tribe, and with each step, he felt the fire of their unity propel him forward. In the sacred circle, the tribe awaited the dawn, unaware that their young warrior was risking everything for their future. The battle was not just a fight for survival. It was a test of their spirit, and Malik was determined that their legacy would not fade into the sands of time. As the sun slipped beneath the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the barren sands, Malik crept silently through the dunes. The distant thrum of war drums resonated in his chest, a relentless reminder of the approaching storm. The air was thick with tension, a palpable force that urged him forward, deeper into the enemy's territory. He could hear the faint murmur of voices, punctuated by laughter and the clinking of metal. With each careful step, he recalled Idris's words, echoing in his mind like a battle cry. To know our enemy is to know ourselves. The weight of those words pressed heavily on his shoulders, pushing him to prove his mettle. Malik's heart raced, not just from fear, but from the thrill of the unknown. He was on the brink of becoming a warrior, a protector of his tribe, and he could not let this opportunity slip away. Suddenly, a sharp rustle in the nearby brush made him freeze. He turned slowly, hand instinctively reaching for the dagger strapped to his thigh. From behind a cluster of rocks, a figure emerged, an older man, clad in tattered garments, his face weathered by time and hardship. Malik's breath caught in his throat. He recognized him as one of the enemy's scouts, a man rumored to have once been a great warrior in his own right. The scout's eyes widened as they locked onto Malik's. For a fleeting moment they shared a silent understanding. Two warriors caught between duty and survival. Malik's mind raced. He could easily dispatch the man, silence him forever, but something held him back. Instead, he offered a subtle nod, a sign of respect, recognizing the shared humanity in their conflict. The scout hesitated, then lowered his weapon, mirroring Malik's gesture. "We are not so different, you and I," he said, his voice low and gravelly, "both bound by our people, both longing for peace amid chaos." Malik's heart thundered in his chest, caught between the teachings of Farid, who preached honor in battle, and the primal instinct to fight for survival. "You are on the wrong side," Malik said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Leave this place, or face the consequences." The scout chuckled softly, his gaze distant. "You think you fight for glory, for honor. War only begets more war. If you seek to protect your tribe, consider this. Knowledge is your greatest weapon." With that, he stepped back, retreating into the shadows like a ghost, leaving Malik with a new burden, a realization of the complexity of their struggle. Returning to the camp, Malik's mind swirled with thoughts. He had gathered valuable information, not just about the enemy's numbers, but about their shared humanity. He knew he had to relay this insight to Idris and the others, but a part of him feared what they might think. Would they see him as weak for hesitating, or would they understand the wisdom behind his choice? As he approached the fire, the flickering flames illuminated the faces of his tribe, each warrior enshrined in determination. Idris stood at the forefront, his eyes scanning the horizon, the weight of leadership etched into his brow. "Malik," Idris called, his voice piercing the tension in the air. "What news do you bring?" Taking a deep breath, Malik stepped into the circle of light, feeling the intensity of their gazes upon him. The enemy is numerous, but they are not mindless beasts. They too fight for their own, driven by fear and desperation. We must remember that in our battle, there's not just the clash of steel, but the clash of hearts. A murmur rippled through the gathered warriors, a mixture of confusion and contemplation. Farid's voice rose above the rest, wise and resonant. This boy speaks of truth. Perhaps understanding our enemy will not only strengthen our resolve, but may lead us to a path of peace. The fire crackled, its flames dancing higher as night deepened around them. Malik felt a surge of hope. Perhaps he was not merely a fledgling warrior. Perhaps he could be the bridge between two worlds, a pathfinder in the desolate expanse of war. As he finished speaking, the distant sound of war drums drew near, a reminder of the conflict that lay ahead. Idris stepped forward, his hand resting on Malik's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the boy's courage. We prepare for battle, but we do so with wisdom. Remember this night, for it may shape the fate of our people. With those words, the tribe began to rally, each warrior steeling their resolve, readying their spirits for the fight that awaited them. Malik stood tall among them, a newfound clarity igniting his determination, ready to embrace the legacy of his ancestors and carve his own path into the annals of history. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the desert in hues of gold and crimson, the atmosphere shifted. Warriors moved with purpose, their silhouettes stark against the rising sun. The war drums intensified, echoing the collective heartbeat of the tribe, but within the pulse of preparation, Malik felt an unsettling rhythm of doubt. Idris stood at the forefront, his voice a potent blend of thunder and inspiration. Today, we do not fight for mere survival. We fight to honor our ancestors and forge a path for our children. He raised his sword, glinting in the early light, and the warriors roared in unison. Yet Malik felt the weight of each cheer pressed against his heart. He knew the cost of war too intimately now. Malik. Bashir called, his presence a steady anchor amidst the mounting chaos. I see the fire in your eyes, but do not let it consume you. Remember, a warrior's strength lies not just in his blade, but in his mind. The seasoned warrior placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, grounding him. You have a gift for understanding. Use it wisely. With Bashir's words echoing in his mind, Malik sought out Farid, who sat beneath a palm tree, lost in thought. The wise figure's brows furrowed in concern as Malik approached. I fear for our people, Farid. What if the insights I gathered do not lead to peace, but to further bloodshed? Farid looked up, his eyes reflecting the depth of his experience. Peace is often a treacherous path, Malik. It requires strength, yes, but also vulnerability. The enemy you see before you is not just a foe. They are families, dreams, and fears. Remember that. As Malik nodded, an unexpected commotion erupted from the edge of the encampment. A group of scouts returned, their faces grim. The enemy was closer than anticipated, their banners waving defiantly against the morning sky. The urgency escalated, and Malik felt the energy shift from hope to apprehension. Gather the warriors, Idris commanded, his voice slicing through the rising panic. We prepare for battle. But Malik hesitated. As the tribe rallied, he knew that his moment to intervene was upon him. Idris, he called out, stepping forward, his heart pounding. Before we charge into conflict, let us consider the possibility of a parley. I have seen their faces. They are not so different from us. We could speak instead of fight. The tribe fell silent, eyes turning toward him, the air thick with tension. Bashir's expression shifted from skepticism to intrigue, while Farid leaned forward, curiosity igniting in his gaze. Idris studied Malik, a flicker of respect mixing with the weight of leadership. "Speak, Malik," he urged, his tone both a challenge and an invitation. "What do you propose?" In that moment, Malik felt the gravity of his words. "We could send a delegation, an offer of dialogue. I met one of their scouts and we found common ground. If we approach them with the intent to understand, perhaps we can find a way to avoid this battle altogether." The murmurs of dissent rippled through the crowd, but Malik pressed on, his voice more resolute. "War will claim our lives and our future. We cannot let fear dictate our actions. What if we could build a bridge instead of a grave?" Idris regarded Malik with a mixture of admiration and hesitation. "And if they refuse, what then?" "Then we will know we have done everything in our power for peace," Malik replied, his heart racing. "And we will fight with honor, knowing we sought understanding first." A charged silence enveloped the tribe, and Malik could sense the shifting tides of opinion. After a long moment, Idris nodded slowly, his eyes fierce with conviction. "Very well, Malik. We will attempt this parley. Gather your strongest words, for they may be the last chance we have to avoid bloodshed." As Malik stepped back, a mixture of relief and trepidation washed over him. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope igniting within him. Perhaps this was the moment he had been waiting for, a chance to redefine what it meant to be a warrior. As the tribe prepared to send forth their message of peace, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the desert. With every heartbeat, Malik understood that the battle was not just outside the encampment, but within every warrior's soul. He would fight not only for survival, but for the promise of a united future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange and purple hue across the vast expanse of sand, Malik sat outside the tent he shared with his father, gazing into the flames of the small fire crackling nearby. The warmth enveloped him, yet an unsettling chill settled in his bones at the thought of what lay ahead. He could hear the murmurs of his tribe, the weight of their fears and hopes palpable in the air. Idris approached, his silhouette framed against the twilight. The leader's presence was commanding, a reminder of the responsibility he bore. "You did well today, Malik," he said, taking a seat beside him. "Your words may have swayed some, but there are others who will not be so easily convinced." Malik nodded, his heart heavy with the burden of his convictions. "I know, Idris, but we must try. If we do not reach out, we risk becoming monsters ourselves, fighting for reasons that are not our own." Idris considered this, his brow furrowed in thought. "You speak with the wisdom of a man far beyond your years, but there are dangers in the desire for peace. Not all will see it as you do." Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Farid, the tribe's elder. His presence brought a sense of calm, and he settled down across from Malik and Idris. "Peace is indeed a treacherous path, but it is worth the risk," he said, his voice steady. "What you have proposed may sow the seeds of understanding, but you must be prepared for the possibility that not everyone desires peace." Malik felt a flicker of doubt ignite within him. What if they refuse to listen? What if they see my offer as a sign of weakness? Farid smiled gently. "To seek peace is the bravest act of all. It requires more courage than to draw a blade. Remember, sometimes the greatest victories come from the battles we choose not to fight." As the stars began to twinkle above, Malik's gaze drifted towards the horizon, where the enemy camp was rumored to lie. He imagined the faces of those who prepared for war, just like his own tribe. Perhaps among them there were others who, like him, yearned for a different kind of resolution. The following day, as the sun rose, painting the desert in hues of gold, Malik prepared for the parley. He gathered tokens from his tribe: a small, intricately carved wooden figurine, a piece of vibrant fabric, and dried herbs that had long been used in their rituals for peace. These items represented their hopes, symbols of their willingness to bridge the divide. With each step towards the enemy encampment, his heart raced. Beside him, Bashir walked silently, his presence a comforting reminder of the strength that lay in unity and purpose. "Remember, Malik," Bashir said, "the path you tread is fraught with uncertainty, but your resolve is your greatest weapon." As they approached the enemy territory, Malik's mind raced with thoughts of the scout he had spared. What would he say? Would he stand by his side, or would he urge his people to war? The tension in the air was thick, and each heartbeat felt like a drum signaling the potential for conflict, or perhaps the promise of peace. When they reached the center of the enemy camp, they were met with wary gazes and the low murmurs of a tribe preparing for a confrontation. Malik stepped forward, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "I am Malik of the Taylor tribe. I come not to demand, but to offer a hand in peace. Let us speak as men and women of honor, not as warriors bound by blood and hatred." A silence fell over the crowd, and from among them emerged the enemy scout, his eyes locking with Malik's. Recognition flickered between them, a silent agreement that transcended the animosity of their tribes. Would this moment mark the beginning of understanding, or would it spiral into chaos? Malik held his breath, praying for the strength to uphold the vision he had for a united future. As Malik neared the enemy camp, the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the barren landscape. The shadows of the enemy's tents loomed large, creating a surreal contrast against the vibrant colors of the dusk. He could hear the distant murmurs of soldiers preparing for battle, their voices rippling through the air like the winds that swept across the desert dunes. Each step felt heavier than the last, as Malik grappled with the immense weight of his mission. In his hands, he clutched the tokens of goodwill, a finely woven scarf adorned with the symbols of his tribe, a small pouch of fragrant herbs known for their calming properties, and a beautifully crafted dagger, its hilt engraved with intricate designs representing unity and strength. These items were not merely gifts. They were a bridge between two worlds, a testament to the hope that peace could prevail over bloodshed. As he approached the entrance to the enemy camp, Malik's heart raced. He remembered Bashir's words, echoing in his mind. "Wisdom is the strongest weapon you possess." He took a deep breath, steadying himself. He was not here to fight, he was here to negotiate the fate of his people. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a tall warrior draped in dark fabrics, his face partially obscured by a scarf. Malik recognized him immediately as Oren, the fierce commander of the enemy forces, notorious for his ruthless tactics in previous skirmishes. The tension between them was palpable, like the charged air before a storm. "Why do you approach our camp, young warrior?" Oren's voice was low, gravely, as if it had been forged in the heat of battle itself. "Do you seek to challenge us with words, or do you come to surrender?" I come in peace, Malik replied, forcing himself to meet Oren's gaze. I bring gifts as symbols of goodwill from my tribe. We wish to speak, to find a way to avoid the bloodshed that looms over us both. Oren's eyes narrowed, studying Malik with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Peace, in a time like this. Many would see your approach as a sign of weakness. Then let it be a strength, Malik urged, stepping forward. I know the cost of war, and I understand the heartache it brings. I have seen too many lives lost, and I do not wish to add to that toll. We have the chance to forge a different path today. Let us talk. After a moment of silence that felt like an eternity, Oren motioned for Malik to enter the camp. Very well. Speak your mind, but know that betrayal would not be taken lightly. My men are ready for battle at a moment's notice. Malik nodded, a flicker of hope igniting within him as he followed Oren into the heart of the enemy encampment. The atmosphere was tense, yet something unexpected lingered in the air. Curiosity, perhaps, or the faint glimmer of possibility. As they gathered around a fire, Malik began to share stories of their shared history, tales of battles fought long ago, of times when tribes had united against a common foe instead of turning on each other. He spoke of the land they both called home, the resources they could share, and the future that could be built on collaboration rather than conflict. Oren listened intently, a flicker of contemplation crossing his rugged features. You speak of unity, yet our tribes have been enemies for generations. What makes you think that your words can change what has been written in blood? Because I believe that the future is not bound by the past, Malik replied passionately. We have a choice. We can continue to let hatred dictate our actions, or we can choose a different legacy, one where our children know peace instead of war. The fire crackled between them, casting shadows of hope against the canvas of doubt. For a moment, Malik dared to believe that the tide of history could turn, not through the clash of swords, but through the strength of their shared humanity. As the night deepened, Malik felt a sense of resolve growing within him. Perhaps the seeds of peace had already begun to take root in the hearts of those who had once only known animosity. It was a fragile hope, but it was a hope nonetheless. A flicker of light in the vast desert of despair.